Walter retired last spring after 38 years in the same industry. His colleagues threw him a party. There were speeches about his dedication, his consistency, his willingness to mentor younger employees who came up through the department over the decades. His manager said he was irreplaceable. His wife cried. His children flew in from 2 different states. By every visible measure, it was the ending a working life deserves. 6 weeks later, Walter sat at his kitchen table with a calculator and a legal pad and did the arithmetic he had been avoiding for most of his adult life. His Social Security benefit was $2,100 per month. His retirement account, the 401k he had contributed to since his mid-30s at whatever rate felt manageable in any given year, had $213,000 in it. His house was paid off. His monthly expenses, estimated carefully for the first time, were $3,900. He stared at the numbers for a long time. $2,100 from Social Security. He needed $3,900. The $1,800 monthly shortfall had to come from the $213,000. At that draw rate, the account would last approximately 9 years and 10 months. Walter was 66. The actuarial tables suggested he would live to 82. His wife, 2 years younger, to 85. He had a gap. A significant, inescapable, compounding gap between the retirement he had worked 38 years to reach and the financial resources available to fund it. Now I want to tell you about Walter's former colleague, Dennis. Dennis retired the same month, also after a long career, also with a paid-off house, also drawing Social Security. Their careers had been parallel in almost every professional dimension. Same industry, similar roles, similar income trajectories. They had attended the same conferences, worked on some of the same projects, and known each other for nearly 20 years. Dennis retired with $890,000 in his retirement accounts. Not $2 million. Not the number you see on financial planning websites as the gold standard. But $890,000, a number that, combined with his Social Security income of $2,300 per month, produces a monthly income of approximately $5,700 when drawn at a sustainable rate. More than his monthly expenses. Enough to travel occasionally. Enough to help his grandchildren. Enough to replace the car when it needs replacing without losing sleep. Same industry. Same era. Similar incomes across similar career arcs. A difference of $677,000 in retirement assets between 2 men whose professional lives were nearly identical. The difference was not luck. It was not inheritance. It was not a single brilliant investment decision. It was a set of specific, ordinary, consistently applied financial behaviors spread across 30 years, behaviors that Dennis cannot fully articulate even now. Because they became so habitual that he stopped thinking of them as discipline and started thinking of them as just how he managed money. Walter thinks about money every day now. Dennis thinks about it on Sundays, briefly, and then goes back to his week. Pause. Music fades in softly. This isn't about $2 million. It's about understanding what realistic retirement security actually requires, what the actual distribution of retirement savings in America looks like, and, most importantly, the specific, ordinary behaviors that produce the difference between Walter's retirement and Dennis's. Not the extraordinary behaviors. The ordinary ones. Applied consistently. For long enough. I'm going to show you the real rules of retirement savings in America, what the numbers actually say about who is what, why the $2 million benchmark is simultaneously aspirational and misleading, what realistic security looks like across different income levels, and the specific decisions that explain the gap between 2 people who worked side by side for decades and arrived at retirement in completely different financial positions. These are the rules that most people understand too late and a small number of people understood just in time. Transition to core content. Rule 1. The $2 million retirement benchmark is real for some people and irrelevant for most, and confusing the two produces either paralysis or false comfort depending on which direction you misread it. The $2 million retirement figure circulates widely in personal finance content, and it is not arbitrary. For a household spending $80,000 per year in retirement with no pension and minimal Social Security, a $2 million portfolio at a 4% withdrawal rate produces exactly that $80,000. The math is legitimate. The problem is the context in which it gets applied. Most of the people who encounter the $2 million benchmark do not spend $80,000 per year. The median American household's retirement spending is closer to $45,000 to $55,000 per year, and for many households, a significant portion of that is covered by Social Security before investment assets are touched. For a household spending $50,000 per year with $22,000 in annual Social Security benefits, the portfolio needs to generate $28,000 per year. At a 4% withdrawal rate, the required portfolio is $700,000, not $2 million. For a household spending $40,000 per year with $20,000 in Social Security, the required portfolio is $500,000. These are not consolation prizes. They are the actual retirement security targets for the majority of American households. And the distance between where most people are and where they need to be is significantly different from the distance between where they are and $2 million. Walter's number was approximately $540,000, given his Social Security benefit and his actual monthly expense level. He had $213,000. He was short, meaningfully short, but not $2 million short. Understanding his actual target, rather than measuring himself against a benchmark designed for a different income level, would have produced a more accurate and more actionable understanding of his situation 20 years before it arrived at a kitchen table. Rule 2. Almost nobody has $2 million in retirement savings, and the actual distribution of retirement wealth in America is far more concentrated than most people realize. Let's put actual numbers on this, because the reality is significantly different from the impression created by financial planning content that treats $2 million as a standard target. According to the most recent Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, approximately 3% of American households have $2 million or more in retirement account assets. 3%. The other 97% of American households, regardless of their diligence, their intentions, or their awareness of the $2 million benchmark, have not reached it. The distribution looks like this. Approximately 45% of Americans approaching retirement have no retirement savings at all. Of those who do have savings, the median balance is approximately $87,000 for households aged 65 to 74. The 75th percentile, meaning 75% of Americans have less, is approximately $350,000. The 95th percentile, meaning 95% have less, is approximately $1,100,000. $2 million places you in the top 2 to 3% of American retirement savers. This matters for two reasons that pull in opposite directions. For people who have been measuring themselves against $2 million and feeling impossibly behind, the actual distribution suggests their target may be significantly more achievable than they assumed. For people who have been taking comfort in having more than the average, the distribution reveals that average is catastrophically insufficient, and being above average is not the same as being adequately prepared. Dennis, with $890,000, is in approximately the 93rd percentile of American retirement savers. He is not in the top 3%. He is not at $2 million. He is deeply secure and dramatically better positioned than the vast majority of his contemporaries on a salary that was entirely ordinary. Rule 3. The gap between adequate retirement savings and average retirement savings is explained almost entirely by one variable, the savings rate maintained across the accumulation period, and almost nothing else. This rule cuts through the complexity that most retirement planning content introduces and identifies the single variable that explains most of the variation in retirement outcomes between people at similar income levels. Not investment selection. Not market timing. Not the specific funds chosen or the asset allocation maintained. The savings rate. The percentage of income consistently directed to retirement accounts across the working years. Here is the math that makes this undeniable. Two people, both earning $70,000 per year, both investing in the same S&P 500 index fund, both starting at 25 and retiring at 65. Person A saves 10% of income, $7,000 per year. Person B saves 15%, $10,500 per year. At a 7% average annual return, Person A retires with approximately $1,480,000. Person B retires with approximately $2,220,000. The 5 percentage point difference in savings rate, $3,500 per year, or $291 per month, produced a $740,000 difference in retirement wealth. Not from superior investment returns. From the compounding effect of a slightly higher consistent savings rate across 40 years. Walter's savings rate across his career averaged approximately 6 to 7%, the minimum to receive his employer's full match, which is where most people set their contribution and leave it indefinitely. Dennis's savings rate averaged 11 to 12%, not dramatically higher, not heroic, but consistently above the threshold where the extra contribution compounds meaningfully across decades. The 6 percentage point difference in their savings rates explains the majority of the $677,000 gap in their retirement assets. Not luck. Not income. Not investment sophistication. 6 cents more of every dollar directed to a retirement account for 30 years. Rule 4. Employer matching is the highest guaranteed return available in personal finance, and leaving any of it uncaptured is one of the most consistently made and most costly financial mistakes in America. The employer 401k match is a guaranteed, immediate, 100% return on the matched portion of your contribution. If your employer matches 50% of contributions up to 6% of your salary, contributing 6% produces a 50% immediate return on those dollars before they've been invested for a single day. No investment available anywhere, no stock, no fund, no alternative asset, offers a guaranteed 50% immediate return. The employer match is categorically different from every other investment decision you will ever make. It is not a market return. It is a contractual return that exists independent of what the market does. Approximately 25% of employees with access to a 401k match do not contribute enough to capture the full match. At the median income level, this represents approximately $2,000 to $3,500 per year in unearned compensation, money the employer was prepared to give and the employee left behind. Over 30 years, $2,500 per year in uncaptured match, invested at 7%, would be worth approximately $236,000. Not from additional employee contributions. From employer money that was available and not collected. But here's what most people miss. The uncaptured match is not the only cost. The uncaptured match also fails to compound on the employee's behalf. The $236,000 foregone account balance doesn't grow further. The absence of that base from the portfolio means every subsequent year's returns are calculated on a smaller foundation than they should be. The real cost of consistently failing to capture the full match is larger than the match itself. Walter captured his full match throughout his career. The 6% he contributed earned the maximum employer contribution. He did not contribute beyond 6% except in a few years when it felt financially comfortable. That minimum match behavior is the most common pattern in American 401k participation, and it produces outcomes at the lower end of the adequacy range rather than the security range. Rule 5. The retirement savings crisis is not primarily a crisis of the poor, it is a crisis of the middle class, and understanding why changes how you think about your own situation. When most people think about retirement savings inadequacy, they think about lower-income workers who genuinely cannot save, people whose income is consumed by basic necessities with nothing remaining for investment. This group exists and their situation is genuinely difficult. But the majority of American households with inadequate retirement savings are middle-income households, families earning $50,000 to $150,000 per year who have the income to save adequately and consistently don't. Research from multiple sources consistently shows that middle-income households save a lower percentage of their income than both lower-income households receiving tax incentives to save and higher-income households with sufficient surplus to save after expenses. The mechanism is lifestyle inflation. As income rises through the middle income range, spending consistently rises to match it. The raise that should have increased the savings rate instead increased the monthly expense load. The bonus that should have accelerated the retirement account instead funded a vacation and a car upgrade. The income growth that should have produced compounding wealth instead produced a more comfortable present at the expense of a secure future. This pattern produces the specific outcome Walter experienced. Not poverty. Not desperation. A comfortable working life followed by a retirement that requires constant financial awareness because the margin is thin and the consequences of getting it wrong are significant. Dennis avoided this pattern not through extraordinary discipline, but through a specific structural habit. Every time his income increased meaningfully, he increased his retirement contribution by at least half of the after-tax raise before his lifestyle had the chance to expand around the new income. The lifestyle improvement was real and felt. The retirement contribution capture was also real and felt, eventually, in the form of $890,000 at the end of his career. Rule 6. Social Security is a more significant retirement asset than most people's planning accounts for, and correctly valuing it changes the retirement savings target in ways that make adequacy more achievable for most people. Most people know they'll receive Social Security. Most people do not know what it is actually worth as a retirement asset, and that ignorance consistently produces retirement savings targets that are either too high, leading to discouragement, or too low, leading to inadequate preparation. Here is the correct way to value Social Security. The average Social Security benefit for a worker retiring at full retirement age in 2026 is approximately $2,000 per month, $24,000 per year. To produce $24,000 per year from an investment portfolio at a 4% withdrawal rate would require $600,000 in invested assets. Your Social Security benefit is therefore equivalent to having approximately $600,000 in your retirement account, an asset that requires no management, doesn't decline in market downturns, and is indexed to inflation. This equivalency transforms the retirement calculation for most workers. A household receiving $24,000 per year from Social Security needs its investment portfolio to generate only the remainder of their target income, not the full amount. The $2 million target that seems impossibly distant from most people's current savings balance is calculated without this $600,000 equivalent asset. With it, the actual portfolio required for the same retirement security is $1.4 million for a household that would otherwise need $2 million. I'm not done yet. Delayed Social Security claiming increases the benefit permanently. Claiming at 70 rather than 62 increases the monthly benefit by approximately 76%. The household that would have received $2,000 per month at 67 receives approximately $2,640 per month by waiting until 70. That additional $640 per month is equivalent to having an additional $192,000 in retirement assets. Delaying Social Security by 3 years for a worker with flexibility in their retirement timeline adds the equivalent of $192,000 to their retirement security without adding a dollar to their portfolio. Rule 7. The decade between 55 and 65 is the most financially productive decade of most people's retirement-building lives, and most people spend it on lifestyle rather than acceleration. This rule is about the specific opportunity that the final decade of a working career presents, an opportunity that most people don't recognize until it has passed. The decade from 55 to 65 typically features several financial convergences that, properly directed, can dramatically accelerate retirement savings. Children are often financially independent, eliminating significant expense categories. Mortgages are frequently paid off or approaching payoff, freeing hundreds of dollars per month. Career earnings are typically at or near their peak. Catch-up contribution limits, $7,500 additional for 401k accounts for those 50 and older, create additional tax-advantaged capacity. And the combination of all of these factors typically produces the highest discretionary cash flow of a working life. The tragedy is that this cash flow is almost universally absorbed by lifestyle expansion rather than retirement acceleration. The empty nester couple upgrades to a new car when the last child leaves. The paid-off mortgage enables a kitchen renovation rather than a retirement contribution increase. The peak salary year produces a vacation rather than a catch-up contribution. Each of these decisions is individually understandable. Together, they waste the decade that could most efficiently close the retirement savings gap. Walter reached 65 with a paid-off house and no children at home, conditions that had been in place for about 7 years. In those 7 years, he had approximately $2,200 per month in freed cash flow relative to his earlier years. 7 years times 12 months times $2,200 is $184,800 in additional cash flow. Invested over the same period at 7%, it would have grown to approximately $222,000. His retirement account would have been $435,000 instead of $213,000. He did not invest it. He spent it on the comfortable, unremarkable, eminently forgettable ordinary pleasures of a comfortable middle-class life in which money felt abundant for the first time and the urgency of retirement seemed distant until it wasn't. Rule 8. Sequence of returns risk is the specific threat that turns adequate retirement savings into inadequate ones, and most retirees have never heard the term. You can do everything right during the accumulation phase and still experience a retirement that falls short if the early years of your retirement coincide with significant market declines. This is sequence of returns risk, and it operates independently of your total savings balance. Here is why it matters. A retiree with $500,000 who experiences a 30% market decline in year 1 of retirement, losing $150,000, and continues withdrawing $25,000 per year for expenses starts year 2 with $325,000 rather than $500,000. The subsequent recovery that returns the market to its previous level does not restore this retiree to their original position because they were selling assets during the decline to fund withdrawals. The recovery applies to a smaller base. The trajectory of the portfolio has been permanently impaired by the timing of the decline. The retiree who experiences the same 30% decline in year 20 of retirement, when the portfolio has grown through years of positive returns and the remaining withdrawal period is shorter, experiences a significantly less damaging outcome from the same decline. The defense against sequence of returns risk is the one most retirees haven't built, a cash buffer of 1 to 3 years of expenses in non-market assets, held specifically to fund withdrawals during market declines, allowing the invested portfolio time to recover before withdrawals resume. Dennis has a $180,000 bond and cash allocation specifically structured as this buffer. If the market declines 30% in his first 3 years of retirement, he draws from the buffer while his equity portfolio recovers. He does not sell equities at their lowest point to fund his grocery bill. Walter has no such buffer. His $213,000 is entirely in equity funds because that's how it was invested during accumulation, and he never restructured it for the distribution phase. If a significant market decline occurs in the early years of his retirement, the sequence of returns problem will compound his already thin margin into a genuine crisis. Rule 9. Healthcare costs in retirement are the largest financial variable that most retirement plans either ignore or dramatically underestimate, and the numbers are large enough to reframe the entire retirement savings calculation. Fidelity estimates that a 65-year-old couple will spend approximately $315,000 in out-of-pocket healthcare costs over a typical retirement horizon. This figure includes Medicare premiums, supplemental coverage, dental, vision, hearing, and out-of-pocket medical expenses, but excludes long-term care, which represents a separate and potentially much larger liability. $315,000 is not a rounding error. It is a significant portion of most people's retirement savings. For Walter, with $213,000, the $315,000 healthcare estimate means his retirement savings are insufficient to cover healthcare costs alone, let alone living expenses. His Social Security income will absorb much of the healthcare cost, but the interaction of healthcare expenses with his overall retirement cash flow is a problem he has not yet fully mapped. But here's what most people miss. The $315,000 figure is an average. For people who enter retirement with significant chronic conditions, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity-related conditions, the figure is substantially higher. For people who require long-term care at some point, and approximately 70% of people over 65 will require some form of long-term care, the additional cost ranges from tens of thousands to several $100,000, depending on the duration and intensity of care needed. Long-term care costs average approximately $95,000 per year for a private room in a nursing facility. Even a 2-year stay, shorter than average, represents $190,000 in costs that most retirement plans have no specific provision for. Dennis carries a long-term care insurance policy he purchased at 58, when premiums were still manageable. The policy cost him approximately $3,200 per year. It provides coverage that would otherwise require him to liquidate his entire retirement account in the event of a significant care need. Rule 10. The retirement savings conversation most people need to have is not about reaching $2 million. It is about calculating their actual personal number and building a plan that reaches it from wherever they currently are. This rule exists because the most common and most damaging response to retirement savings content is the conviction that the target is so far away that meaningful progress is impossible. People look at $2 million, look at their current balance, calculate the gap, and conclude that the situation is either hopeless or will resolve itself somehow without specific action. Both responses are wrong, and both are prevented by the same thing: knowing your actual personal retirement number. Your number is specific to your expected retirement expenses, your projected Social Security benefit, your planned retirement age, and the withdrawal rate appropriate for your expected retirement duration. It is not $2 million because some article said $2 million. It is the result of a calculation that takes your specific inputs and produces a target that is meaningful because it describes your actual situation. For many people doing this calculation honestly for the first time, the result is both more achievable and more urgent than they expected. More achievable because the Social Security equivalency and the actual expense level make the required portfolio smaller than the $2 million benchmark implied. More urgent because the gap between their current trajectory and their actual number is real, and closing it requires specific action that cannot be deferred indefinitely. Dennis knew his number at 42. It was $750,000, based on his expected expenses and Social Security projection at the time. He updated it at 50 and at 58 as the variables changed. He built his savings behavior around that specific target, not a cultural benchmark, not someone else's income level, but the number that represented security for his specific life. He reached $890,000, 20% above his target, through 30 years of ordinary behavior directed at a clearly defined destination. Walter had no number. He had a vague intention toward security that never crystallized into a specific target against which his progress could be measured or his behavior could be calibrated. Without the number, there was no way to know whether 6% contributions were adequate. They weren't. But the inadequacy was invisible because the target was undefined. Transition to closing. Walter and Dennis both received their last paychecks in the same month. Both stood at the same threshold, the transition from earning to drawing, from accumulating to distributing, from the working life they had known for nearly 4 decades to the retirement they had worked toward. Both had paid-off homes and Social Security benefits and the quiet satisfaction of careers that had meant something. The party they threw Walter was lovely. Dennis attended and said kind things. He brought a nice bottle of wine. He meant it when he said Walter deserved the recognition. What Dennis did not say, because it was not the moment and was not his to say, was the thing that had been true for 30 years between them. That the difference in their retirements was not the result of different luck or different opportunities or different intelligence. That it was the result of a number Dennis had written down at 42 in a notebook. He still has a specific dollar amount that represented security for his specific life, and the ordinary, consistently applied, never heroic behavior of directing enough of his income toward that number for long enough that compounding did the rest. Walter is figuring it out. He and his wife are working through the math. There are options, modest lifestyle adjustments, part-time consulting work he's been offered, a social security delay for his wife that will increase her benefit. The situation is manageable with attention and planning. It is not the retirement he imagined at the party where people told him he deserved to relax. Dennis is in Portugal this week. He sent a photograph. The $2 million question, who has it? Almost no one, is the wrong question. The right question is simpler and more personal and more immediately useful. What is your number? Do you know it? And if you do, does what you're doing every month move you toward it at a rate that will get you there before you need it? Walter never asked those questions until the kitchen table. Dennis asked them at 42. One of them is in Portugal. The other is doing arithmetic. OUTRO, quiet, measured, reflective. End card. If this video made you want to finally calculate your actual retirement number, the specific figure that describes your security, not someone else's, the next video walks through the exact calculation using your actual numbers. Not $2 million. Your number. Share this with one person who is measuring themselves against the wrong target and either discouraged or falsely comfortable as a result.